What's up, y'all? How you doing? You all right? A little loose? That video was pretty funny. Good job. Well, I was always crushing it. How bad do you want it? It's a good question, right? As I sat in my room as a child, I used to stare at the light blue ceiling, hoping that one day I'd make it out of the hardships I was born into. You see, I grew up in a small one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. My sister and my mother, they shared a room, and I was too old to sleep in the bed with my mom anymore, and I was given the catering closet. Pots and pans and chafing dish after chafing dish surrounded me. Not too different than Harry Potter, I was confined, but I was content, as I knew this was temporary. It had just enough room to hold a bed, and I would stare at that blue ceiling until it morphed into a sky. How bad do you want it? I went on to develop an affinity for cooking, slightly because I was surrounded by it, literally, but also because it was an escape for me. My mother was a chef, and catering was her craft. I wanted to be like her so much growing up. Seeing her manage accounts, make her own money, and the freedom to create her own schedule. These things inspired me to be an entrepreneur at a young age. Money was hard to come by, as catering, has its seasons just like the weather. Our candle nights, where we would gather together and play board games under a wax-lit room, became more frequent, a way to distract us that the light bill wasn't paid. I vowed to never have to do that when I got older. I vowed to never have to wonder when the next paycheck was coming in. I wanted out, bad. We yearned for financial freedom, but we didn't want for love, for that was abundant. But still at that age, I wanted something more. So I rebelled, and I was sent to Africa on a 2-week vacation to live with my grandfather. I quickly learned that that was not a vacation at all, and was left there for 2 years in order to learn respect. I learned where I came from, I learned who I really was. The stuff they forgot to mention in the history books, the things they tried to erase. I learned where food really comes from living, breathing things, something that wouldn't come in handy until I found my career. I found to appreciate this life we have because not many people around the world are afforded our simple pleasantries like running water and conditioned air. I came back to America, honestly, a little worse than when I left. After the shock had washed away, because I had seen things that most people haven't. And I didn't see cooking as a viable option for me because the financial instability. So I turned to the other side that raised me, the streets. There it was comfortable, albeit dangerous, but I can tangibly see something for myself. So I turned to selling drugs so I wouldn't have to miss a meal. My best friend, Jaquan at the time, and I started together. And one bag at a time was like a deposit into our masculine account. Being able to take care of ourselves and our family felt, quite frankly, good. We continued this through college and ended up getting kicked out of college for it. It started as a way to provide and ended up getting so caught up in the haze of hubris that we forgot what we wanted. So we needed to escape and get back to zero. We moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 2 kids from the Bronx. You can imagine the culture shock. Our first time in the South. And it was the first time I was reminded I was black at every given turn. You see, the racism in the North is concealed. In the South, it's so in your face you can smell its breath. I still had cooking up my sleeve, so I applied for a cook position. We had to take a simple test measuring out ingredients, proper cooking times for certain proteins, things like that. It was a simple test with a not so simple result. We were banished to the dish pit, and I looked around and I saw why. Jim Crow had been eliminated, but segregation was still in full effect. They told me I had failed, and when I asked for the results, they weren't able to go into detail. But if I worked hard enough, then one day I could possibly move to the kitchen. Again, like, how bad do you want it? Question kept coming up in my head. So I poured myself into those dishes, literally. Memories of New York at the beginning of the shift would appear like an oasis from the plates towered like a skyline. I did everything possible to organize the porter station, come in early, create more efficient ways for the servers to drop the plates so the return to the dining room was expedited. To pass through the hands of cooks I also wanted to be. I was never promoted, but I did the job no matter how arduous it was. In my mind, I was paying my dues, but to whom? And for what? Jaquan, he couldn't stand the South, so there was no upward mobility for him, and admittedly, I had had enough of the disregard behind the veil of the wine rack, food and half-drunk drinks being splattered on me with no respect. So I did the thing we all despise. I walked out during a shift. Not because of the workload, but because I didn't feel human anymore. Jaquan left shortly after and headed back to the Bronx, and I stayed behind. And I worked the whole restaurant game. Dishwasher, prep cook, server, bartender, cater waiter, catering van driver, offshore chef. I wanted to soak in all that I could. I just wanted to be undeniable. Because that racism and that disregard, it fueled me. After being told time and time again that I was passed up on a position became fuel to my ship. Being told directly that I would never be promoted by other managers that were allies because of the color of my skin, that was a badge of honor. It took a little mental dexterity and also a little craziness to push through all of that, to come in day after day when you don't feel wanted and you don't belong, but you don't want those candle nights again or the rumble of your stomach louder than your thoughts. I had to deal with it. I had ruled out dealing drugs because I didn't see a happy ending. I also didn't see a sense of place where I was at, here in America. What are my options? I asked myself. How bad do you want it? So I moved back to New York, now with the vision and the purpose and the calling. I knew that outside validation was not my source of inspiration and would not be my grand prize anyways, so I had to make opportunities for myself. I knew that if I wanted to make it in this industry, I would have to take it while focusing on my craft and my craft alone. The most important thing is that you must focus on is your craft and on yourself. There's no competition in this industry but the previous day. Focus on small, incremental growths. It's similar to being in the gym. You'll look back 100 days later and see progress made. So I was coming home from work one day and I saw a kid selling candy on the subway. I watched him as he toted his box up and down and snagged a couple dollars here and there, some out of pity, some out of hunger. I did the math and pretty quickly I was like, he made about $6 in 1 minute. I'm like, what does an hour of that look like? $360, damn, okay. So what's an 8-hour shift of that look like? $2,880, Jesus Christ. So a full 5-day work week is $14,400. Shit, I said to myself, if he takes half of that home, this kid is making way more money than I am tax-free. So I went into work the next day. I thanked them so much for the opportunity. And I went to Costco to start my new job. The candy man. But it wasn't as easy as you think, though. Getting on a train with a bunch of tired New Yorkers, screaming at the top of your lungs, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not here selling candy for a basketball team, but I'm selling candy in order to start a catering company. Today I've got Skittles, Snickers, Sour Patch Kids, M&Ms, M&M Peanuts, Starburst, Teddy Grahams, Mini Oreos, Nutter Butters, Gum Mints, Honey Roasted Cashews, Salted Peanuts, Honey Roasted Peanuts, Lay's Potato Chips, and Butterfingers. If you'd like to purchase something, it would be gladly appreciated, so please let me know." It was exhaustive, but it was hilarious, and I also wasn't gonna let a 12-year-old outsell me, so I had something for everyone. I wanted to start a catering company. I thought to myself, if they weren't gonna make me a chef, I'd become one on my own accord. It was a difficult 2 months. But at the end, I had my own commercial kitchen and a staff to boot. We were doing events all over the city. I was legit. I had a goal, and I achieved it no matter what it took to get there. You've got to remember, I grew up in New York City, so it wasn't uncommon for me to run into a friend on the train, like a Jay Quan. I had to push through that to get to where I wanted to be. Fueled by all the no's, I created my own yes. So what did I want at this time? Kind of got it, right? Like, what is enough? Well, during my stint in New York, I stumbled into Craft, the restaurant. I got a peek into a real kitchen, a tightly run ship with tightly folded towels and tightly wound up assholes. And I mean that in the best way. They cared about everything, all right? I learned a lot there. I was successful in catering, but I still had a long way to go. I saw what it meant to operate a really successful restaurant, and I wanted that for myself. But how bad did I really want it? I took the scenic route to Hyde Park. I had just enough money to pay for my first semester, a couple grand that I had saved up, the last of my mother's bank account, and a couple grand donated to me by my man Jay Quan in exchange for free meals for the rest of his life. He stayed with the drug game and was quite successful at this point. So there, I got introduced to the James Beard Foundation, the Michelin Guide, the San Pellegrino list. I got introduced to the Jay-Z, Nas's, and Biggies of the cooking world, Escoffier, Ferdinand Pointe, and Carême. I traded buffet tongs for tweezers and dirty aprons for signature colored ones at the finest restaurants in the world. Now, though, with a warrior skin developed from the South, racism was still present, but it bounced off me like some Nerf darts. I was molded into a machine. I no longer wanted to be accepted, but I wanted my own. And I was like a porous sponge, absorbing the knowledge I was surrounded by. I knew what I had to do to get to where I needed to be. The path was clear and the pool was deep. And boy, did I swan dive in. I worked in kitchen after kitchen, reading book after book, opened restaurant after restaurant, did event after event. It was like traveling at warp speed and the stars flying beside me like lines on a page. The time, it went so fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Time, it is but an illusion though, a mechanism that sits on your wrist reminding you of an impeding finish line or goal that's constantly moving. A pamphlet of paper that hangs on the wall or an app to mark holidays, birthdays, and future meeting, but seldom focuses on the present. What you do with your time is most impactful. The quality of time spent on a certain task or skill will dictate what you achieve whilst on this earth. And I finally picked my head up out of the water and took a deep breath. Breathe. Everybody take a deep breath. My grandfather had passed away. Jay Quan was murdered. I wasn't around for any of it. Like many of you in this crowd, I missed out on so much, focusing on the reward and not the journey. So focused on the destination and not at the journey, at times I missed out on the present. What does this all really mean? What is it that we're searching for? We both were products of my environment. I would call Jay Quan when I was nervous about opening a restaurant, and his words keep in my head to this day. He would say, "Shut up, man. Why are you in your head? These people don't know you or what you had to do to get here. Where we come from, you even getting a chance to open a restaurant is already a win. So keep going for us." And what I would do to have one more conversation with him, or for him to see all of this. This thing called success is like sand. It has to be watered with intention and values, or else it'll slip through your hands as you try to grasp for it. As I get accolades or written about or even invited to speak, there is and will always be the feeling of unwelcome that I've faced my whole life, no matter how hard I try. An imposter syndrome, not for my craft, which I have worked on obsessively, but for what is the purpose of all of it. Is it to dissolve guilt? Is it because they think I'm actually good or worthy? Or is it to check a diversity box? The articles and awards start to feel more mundane than celebratory. I'm here now in present time, and I've got the it, and I've got the want. But when I think about my life as a Black man in these spaces, I kind of get a little uncomfortable, to be honest. And why is that? You know, I was invited, right? It's filled with my peers and people I find friends. The it that I know I want and that I hope we get is comfortability. To feel seen and heard and to create spaces for people to just be. To walk into a room and not have to feel that way. To not have to fight for ownership, equal pay, equal opportunity. To have trust that our ideas, our people, our traditions, our culture, our spaces, our children, our lives matter. I believe that I have the most diverse fine dining restaurant in New York City. And that is an accolade that I hold dearest to my heart. But you don't get any awards for that. That one is for the culture, where diners and staff alike feel seen, feel comfortable, feel important for the first time or on a stage like this. When I glance back at it all, I still see the same things happening at every level. No matter how hard I climbed to escape, since being a child staring up at that blue ceiling. But the fuel now is different. It's the tears of joy and the loud laughter and the big hugs that keep me going. When I look at my legacy when it's all said and done, I'm hopeful that there isn't a dollar amount associated with it, but the lives that I've changed and that I just made the world it's a little more comfortable than how I left it. So how bad do you want it? Thank you.